I never thought I'd be the kind of person to write a post like this, but I can't keep this to myself anymore. I need to know if I was wrong, or if my guilt is just my own personal punishment. It all started 3 months ago when my best friend, Jason, asked me for a favor. Jason and I have been inseparable since college. He's like a brother to me. We've seen each other through bad breakups, dead-end jobs, and family drama. So when he came to me, eyes hollow and desperate, asking if I could cover for him, I didn't even hesitate to say yes. That was my first mistake. Jason had been seeing someone. Not his wife, Megan. He was having an affair with a woman named Claire. I didn't know how long it had been going on, and at the time, I didn't ask. I figured if he was confiding in me, it meant he was going through some kind of personal reckoning. Maybe he was going to end things and needed a cover story for one last meeting, or maybe he was finally coming clean to Megan and needed my support. Either way, I didn't press for details. That was my second mistake. The favor was simple. If Megan asked, I was supposed to say Jason had been with me at our usual bar watching the game. He even sent me a selfie of us from a few months back, just in case. I laughed at the time, not realizing how serious this was. A week later, Megan called me. Her voice was trembling, and I knew something was wrong. She asked if Jason had really been with me that night. My stomach twisted, but I stuck to the script. I told her, yeah, we grabbed a couple of beers, watched the game, nothing unusual. She paused for a long time, and then just whispered, okay. Thanks. She hung up before I could say anything else. I didn't hear from Jason for a couple of days after that, which was odd. Usually, we talked all the time. When he finally reached out, he told me he and Megan were going through a rough patch, but things were fine. I wanted to believe him, so I did. That was my third mistake. Then, last month, Megan showed up at my apartment. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she held out a manila envelope. Inside were printed screenshots of messages between Jason and Claire, explicit messages, timestamps proving he had been lying for months. I knew, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I knew you lied to me. I just wanted to hear it from you. I felt sick. Megan had always been kind to me, had welcomed me into their home, cooked me meals, listened to my problems like I was family. And I had betrayed her. I tried to apologize, but what could I even say? That I was just trying to be a good friend? That I didn't think it would turn into something this awful? That I never thought she'd find out? None of it would have made a difference. She told me Jason had moved out, that she had filed for divorce. And then she said the thing that's been haunting me ever since, I trusted you. Maybe even more than I trusted him. And you lied to me. You let me look like a fool. After she left, I sat in silence for hours, staring at the wall. I kept replaying every decision, every moment when I could have done something different. I could have refused Jason's request. I could have warned Megan. I could have at least told Jason I wouldn't be his alibi. Now, I don't know where I stand. Jason and I haven't spoken since Megan confronted me. I heard from mutual friends that he's staying with Claire. Megan, understandably, wants nothing to do with me. And me? I feel like I ruined 2 relationships, hers and mine. But that's not even the worst part. A few nights ago, I got a text from an unknown number. Just 2 words, you knew. I don't know who sent it. Megan? A friend of hers? Someone else entirely? But since then, I've been feeling like I'm being watched. Paranoia? Maybe. But I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. The message kept playing on repeat in my mind, you knew. It was simple, just 2 words, but it burrowed under my skin like a splinter I couldn't remove. I deleted the text, hoping that would help, but the unease didn't go away. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Every shadow outside my window made me look twice. Then came the emails. Not threatening exactly, but unsettling. One with the subject line, "Do you lie to everyone, or just to the people who trust you?" Another that just said, "Cowards don't sleep well, do they?" All from throwaway addresses. No names. No signatures. I started having trouble sleeping. When I did sleep, I dreamt of Megan's face, how betrayed she looked, the way her voice cracked when she said she trusted me. I dreamt of Jason too, laughing like nothing mattered, like consequences were just optional for him. I didn't tell anyone about the messages. Who would I even tell? I wasn't being threatened in a legal sense. And even if I went to the police, what could I say? Someone is sending me emails calling me a liar. Help! So I did what I always do when I feel overwhelmed. I tried to bury myself in work. But I couldn't focus. At meetings, I caught myself zoning out. I was short with my coworkers. I missed a deadline for the first time in years. My boss pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay. I lied again. Told him I was just tired. That's the thing about lying. Once you start, it's hard to stop. Even small lies feel easier than the truth. Then something happened that forced everything into the open. It was a Friday night, and I had just come home from work. I tossed my keys on the table and went to the kitchen to heat up some leftovers. When I came back into the living room, there was a note on the floor. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten note that hadn't been there before. How do you live with yourself? No signature. Just that single, haunting question, scrawled in messy black ink on a torn scrap of paper. I froze. The front door was still locked. No sign of a break-in. Nothing else in the apartment was touched. But someone had been here. Someone had gotten in. That's when I finally broke down. I called the police. They came, checked everything. Said there was no evidence of forced entry, no fingerprints other than mine. They suggested maybe I left the door unlocked, maybe it was just a prank. They filed a report, but I could tell they didn't take it seriously. I did the only thing I could think to do. I called Jason. Voicemail. I texted, "We need to talk. It's important." No response. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump. I kept checking the locks, over and over again. Part of me wondered if Megan had something to do with it, if this was her way of getting revenge. But that didn't feel right. Megan wasn't cruel. Hurt, yes. Angry, definitely. But not cruel. The next morning, I went for a walk just to clear my head. That's when I saw it, spray painted on the side of the building next to mine in red paint. Liar. Someone knew. And they weren't going to let me forget it. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I covered for my best friend, and now I feel like I'm the one paying the price. Not just with Megan, or with Jason, or even with my own guilt. But with something darker. Something I can't explain. And the worst part? Deep down, I think I deserve it. I thought things might settle after the graffiti. That maybe whoever was tormenting me had made their point. That maybe they'd gotten what they wanted, a visible reminder that I wasn't innocent, that I was as complicit as Jason. But that's not what happened. It only escalated. The next morning, my mailbox was stuffed with printed photos, candid shots of me taken over the past couple of weeks. One of me leaving work. Another of me at the grocery store. One taken through my living room window. All of them printed in black and white, with no notes, no explanations. Just pictures. Watching me. I went to the police again, and again, they shrugged. Unless someone physically harms you or makes a direct threat, they said, there's not much we can do. I asked about getting security footage from the street cameras, but they told me it would require a warrant or proof of a crime. So I did the next best thing, I bought a camera myself. I set it up in my apartment, facing the door and the main window. I started checking the footage every morning. Nothing happened for 3 nights in a row. Then, on the 4th night, I found something. At 3:12 a.m., the camera captured movement near the front door. A figure, dressed in dark clothes and wearing a hoodie, stepped into the frame. They didn't try to get in. They just stood there. Silent. Watching. For 6 minutes. And then they turned and walked away. I froze watching it. 6 full minutes of someone staring at my door. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. By the end of that week, I couldn't eat. Couldn't think. My body ached with stress. I tried reaching out to Jason again, but still nothing. I even tried messaging Claire through Instagram. She never replied, but I could see she read it. That's when I started thinking back, replaying every conversation I had with Jason, every little moment. And I started to wonder, what if this wasn't random? What if this wasn't just some vengeful friend of Megan's, or someone angry about infidelity? What if Jason set this up? The thought sat with me like a stone in my stomach. Jason had always been charismatic. He could charm his way through anything. He could also be manipulative when he wanted to be. In college, he once lied to an entire group of friends just to make himself look better. Back then, I thought it was harmless. But what if he was trying to control the narrative now? Paint himself as a victim? Or worse, punish me for not being careful enough? It made a twisted kind of sense. Jason had everything to lose in that marriage. Megan came from money. The house was in her name. If she proved he cheated and I helped him lie about it, maybe he thought he could shift the blame. Make it seem like I orchestrated the whole thing. Like I pushed him to lie. It wouldn't be hard. After all, I did lie. I was his alibi. I decided to take a drive. Clear my head. I went out to the lake where Jason and I used to go fishing years ago. It was quiet, still, the kind of place where you could think without the weight of the city pressing down on you. I sat on a bench near the water and watched the ripples stretch out under the sky. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. And then my phone buzzed. Unknown number, nice view. Mind if I join? I shot to my feet. My heart thundered in my chest. I scanned the area: trees, parked cars, the narrow path leading back to the lot. No one in sight. I called the number. Straight to voicemail. I didn't drive home. I drove to my sister's place 2 towns over. I didn't tell her everything, just that I needed to stay for a few days. She agreed, no questions asked. But even there, the paranoia followed me. 2 nights later, another text. Unknown number, you're running. That won't help. I broke down in her kitchen, sobbing like a child. My sister held me, confused and scared, and I finally told her the whole story, from Jason's affair to Megan's confrontation, to the notes and photos and now the texts. She wanted to go to the police immediately. I told her I already had. Twice. We decided to install another camera outside her place, just in case. The next day, while she was at work, I got a package. No return address. Just a small box on her porch. Inside, a single wedding band. Jason's. And a note. You never should have said yes. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the note. I called the police again. This time, they took it more seriously. They assigned a detective. Took the note and the ring. Asked me to write down everything, every date, every message, every detail I could remember. And then the detective asked a question I hadn't considered. Is there any reason Jason would want to hurt you? The truth is, I don't know. I thought we were friends. I thought we were closer than brothers. But maybe I was just useful. And maybe now, I'm not. I still haven't heard from Jason. Megan hasn't contacted me either. And the messages have stopped, for now. But every night, I check the locks 3 times. Every morning, I check the cameras. And every time I close my eyes, I wonder if this is over, or if it's just beginning. Because I said yes. I said yes to a lie. And maybe that's all it took to unravel everything. It's strange how quickly your sense of normalcy can erode. Just a few weeks ago, I was living what I thought was a quiet, predictable life. Now, every noise makes my skin crawl. Every knock on the door feels like a threat. And every morning when I wake up, for a split second, I forget where I am and then it crashes back down on me like a wave. The detective assigned to my case, a woman named Alvarez, has been patient, but I can tell she's skeptical. She's polite about it, asking questions slowly, methodically, but I see it in her eyes. She thinks I'm either hiding something or losing it. And honestly, I don't blame her. I've started to wonder the same. The ring they found, the one in the box on my sister's porch, was confirmed to be Jason's. Megan identified it herself. Apparently, he hadn't taken it off in years. She said that even during their worst arguments, he kept it on like it meant something. Now it's just gone. That scared her. More than the affair. More than the divorce. Something about Jason parting with that ring made it feel final. Like he wasn't planning on coming back. Alvarez asked if I thought Jason might be a danger to himself. I didn't know how to answer that. The Jason I knew could be reckless, yes. Selfish? Absolutely. But dangerous? That was harder to say. Still, we agreed to try contacting him officially. The police reached out, even filed a formal request for a wellness check. But Jason wasn't at the apartment he'd supposedly moved into with Claire. In fact, Claire told them reluctantly. I was told that Jason had never moved in with her at all. He stayed for a few nights, then left. She hadn't seen him in nearly 3 weeks. That was news to me. So where the hell was Jason? The messages stopped after the ring incident, which should have brought me relief, but instead, it made me feel like I was walking through a minefield. I didn't know if I was safe or just being lulled into a false sense of security. Every quiet night felt like a setup. Every unanswered call from a friend made me feel more isolated. I started going through old photos and messages from Jason. I don't know what I was looking for, maybe a clue, a pattern, something I missed. But mostly what I found was just friendship. Memories. Dozens of photos of us over the years. Laughing, drinking, traveling. His texts were full of dumb jokes, inside references. We were closer than I remembered, and that hurt more than I expected. How did we get here? Then, a week ago, I got an envelope. No postmark. No return address. Just slid under my door. Inside was a USB drive. I stared at it for nearly an hour before plugging it into my laptop, half expecting it to be some kind of virus. But no, it held only one file, a video. It was grainy, clearly shot on a phone. The footage was shaky, starting in what looked like a motel room. I recognized Jason immediately, sitting on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. He looked broken. Tired. His hair was messy, his clothes wrinkled. There were several empty mini bottles of alcohol on the nightstand beside him. And then he spoke. Quietly, slurred. If you're watching this, then I guess I finally snapped. Or maybe someone else did it for me. Doesn't matter, really. I just want it on record. He looked up at the camera. His eyes were red. I mess that up. Megan, if this gets to you, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Not like this. And to you, you know who you are. You were my best friend. My brother. And I used you. I pulled you into this mess, and you didn't deserve it. None of this is your fault. I made the choices. I lit the match. He paused, looking like he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. He stood up, walked out of frame, and then the video ended. I sat there staring at the screen, heart pounding. I didn't know what scared me more, that Jason might be dead, or that he might not be. Because if he was gone, then all of this was grief. If he wasn't, then I didn't know what this was. I called Alvarez and gave her the drive. She didn't say much, just nodded, thanked me, told me they'd do what they could to trace where it had been filmed. But part of me knew it wouldn't lead to anything. Jason didn't want to be found. That much was clear. Later that night, my sister asked me something that stayed with me since. If you could go back and say no to Jason's request, just that one lie, would you do it? I hesitated. Not because I didn't know the answer. But because saying it out loud felt like betraying him all over again. Yes, I finally said. I would. She nodded, like she expected it. And then she asked the real question. So why does it still feel like you did the right thing back then? I didn't have an answer for that. The days since have been quiet. No more messages. No more packages. Just silence. But last night, I had a dream. I was standing on a beach, waves crashing at my feet. Jason was there, far down the shoreline, waving. I tried to run to him, but every step got heavier, like I was sinking into the sand. He kept calling to me, voice drowned out by the surf. And when I finally reached him, he was gone. I woke up in tears. I don't even know what they were for anymore. I still don't know where Jason is. I don't know who sent the messages. I don't know if this story has an ending or if it's just going to fade into my life like a shadow I'll never quite shake. But I do know this. Every choice has a cost. And sometimes, even when you think you're doing the right thing, you end up paying anyway. If anyone out there has been through something like this, I hope you understand. I hope you know what I mean when I say it's not always about right or wrong. Sometimes it's just about surviving what's left over. And I'm still trying. It's been a month since I watched that video. A month of silence. No texts. No emails. No more photos or strange packages. The spray paint was cleaned off the wall weeks ago, and the USB was taken in as evidence. Detective Alvarez still checks in once a week, but there's never anything new to report. Jason has disappeared. Entirely. It's like the earth swallowed him up. I tried to move on. I really did. I went back to work. I visited friends. I tried to rebuild some kind of normal. But underneath everything, there's this weight. A quiet, constant dread that clings to me like humidity in August. The kind you don't notice until you try to breathe and realize the air is too thick. That's when I started writing. At first, it was just in a notebook trying to make sense of what had happened. The timeline. The lies. The guilt. I thought maybe if I put it all down, I could finally let it go. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because the truth is, even now, I'm still waiting. Waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. A sign. A message. A resolution. Because until then, it's like Jason's ghost is still here, even if he's not dead. 2 weeks ago, I got tired of waiting. So I did something I'm not proud of. I went to Megan's house. I hadn't spoken to her since the day she came to confront me with the envelope. I didn't even know if she still lived there. But her car was in the driveway, and the lights were on, so I took a breath and rang the doorbell. She opened the door halfway. Her face was blank, unreadable. "Hey," I said. My voice cracked. "Can we talk?" She didn't invite me in. She stepped outside and closed the door behind her. "You have 2 minutes," she said. "Say what you need to say." I told her about the messages. The surveillance. The USB drive. Jason's video. Everything. She didn't interrupt. She didn't flinch. When I finished, she just stared at me for a moment, then said, "Do you want me to feel sorry for you?" "No," I said quickly. "That's not why I'm here." "Then what do you want?" I didn't have an answer. Not one I could articulate. "I don't know," I admitted. "Closure? Maybe? I needed you to know." "I knew Jason was broken," she said, her voice low. "But I didn't know how much until you covered for him. And I didn't know how much you were willing to lose for him." She shook her head and looked down at her hands. "He always had a way of making people believe he was the victim," she said. Maybe he really believed it, too. I asked her if she'd seen him since the separation. She shook her head again. "Not once. Not even when I filed for the divorce. He signed the papers through a lawyer. No note. No call. Nothing." I thanked her and turned to leave, but before I got to the steps, she called after me. "Do you think he's dead?" I turned back slowly. "I don't know." "I don't either," she said. "But sometimes, I think that would be easier than believing he's out there, watching us, waiting." I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I went back through all the materials the detective gave me access to, the call logs, the timestamps, the addresses Jason had used. And I found something small. Almost nothing. But something. One of the motels Jason had checked into before disappearing had a second listing. A sister property, just outside a small town an hour from the city. No one had followed up on it because the receipts ended there. So I went. The drive was long and flat. Winter had started to roll in, and the trees were bare. I passed by gas stations with one pump and diners that hadn't updated their menus since the 90s. The motel was run down, tucked behind a convenience store. The sign said vacancy in flickering neon. I parked and walked inside. The clerk looked up from a radio playing old country music. "Help you?" "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "I think my friend might have stayed here a while back. Guy in his 30s. Brown hair. Probably looked like he hadn't slept. Name might have been Jason." The man narrowed his eyes. "Don't remember names. But I remember that guy. Stayed here maybe 3-4 weeks ago. Paid cash. Didn't talk much. Do you know where he went?" He shrugged. "Didn't say. But he left something behind. Weirdest thing." He ducked behind the counter and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. "Said to give it to whoever came looking. I didn't think anyone would." My hand shook as I took it. Back in the car, I opened the notebook. It was Jason's handwriting. Sharp, messy. Each page filled with entries, dates, thoughts, confessions. It wasn't a journal. It was something else. A reckoning. He wrote about Megan. About the affair. About me. He wrote, "I don't know when it started, the rot. I used to think I was a good man. I loved Megan. I loved my best friend. But I think maybe I just loved how they made me feel. And when I couldn't feel that anymore, I ran." He wrote, "I asked him to lie for me because I thought he owed me. And maybe he did. But I knew it was wrong. I just didn't want to be alone when it all fell apart." One line stood out more than the rest. "Maybe the worst thing isn't the lie. It's what the lie costs the people you love." I closed the notebook. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring out at the empty road. Jason was alive. Or had been. I didn't know where he went after that motel. But he'd left that notebook for someone. Me, I think. And maybe that was his way of apologizing. When I drove back into the city, I gave the notebook to Alvarez. She said it helped. That it showed he was unraveling. That maybe he wasn't dangerous, just lost. But I don't think that's entirely true. Because there's a difference between being lost and running away. And I think Jason knew exactly what he was doing. I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness. About whether it's something we owe people or something they have to earn. I don't know if I've earned it from Megan. I don't even know if I've earned it from myself. But I know I'm done hiding. Done waiting for the next shoe to drop. If Jason ever comes back, I'll be ready. And if he doesn't? Then maybe this is my way of making peace with it. With all of it. Because silence doesn't mean closure. And guilt doesn't mean punishment. But facing the truth, that's where healing begins. I'm not there yet. But I'm trying. The days after I handed over the notebook felt different. Not calmer exactly, but quieter. It's like I had been bracing for something for so long, waiting for the next message, the next unmarked package, the next surprise behind my door, that when nothing came, it felt almost suspicious. I couldn't tell if it was the beginning of peace or just the calm before another storm. I'd like to say I used the silence to heal, to rebuild. That I threw myself back into my work, or reached out to old friends, or tried to apologize more meaningfully to Megan. But the truth is, I just existed. I drifted through the days, half there, half watching myself from the outside. I drank more than I should have. I stayed up late and slept in later. I reread Jason's notebook so many times I could recite entire passages from memory. Some nights I'd dream about him. Sometimes he was sitting across from me at the bar, like nothing had changed, making jokes like he used to. Other times, it was the motel room from the video, only I was the one sitting on the edge of the bed, and he was filming me, his face a shadow just behind the lens. Those were the worst dreams. The ones where I wasn't sure who had betrayed whom. It was in one of those hazy mornings after a dream that I got the call. "Detective Alvarez." "We found him," she said. I stood up so fast I knocked over my coffee. "Alive?" "Yes." She gave me the name of a hospital 3 hours away. Said Jason had been admitted 2 days ago after being picked up wandering along a highway. Dehydrated. Delirious. No ID. He gave a fake name at first, but someone ran his prints. "He asked for you," she added. "By name." I didn't hesitate. I packed a bag, got in my car, and drove. The hospital was small, rural, understaffed, underfunded. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone else, and the nurses look like they've been working back-to-back shifts for years. They led me down a long hallway and stopped outside a room with a closed door. "He's stable," the nurse said, "but fragile. Whatever happened to him out there, it wasn't kind." I nodded and pushed the door open. Jason looked like a ghost. His hair was longer, messy. His face was thin, his eyes sunken. There were bruises on his arms, old and fading. He was hooked up 2 and 4, sitting propped up in bed. When he saw me, something flickered across his face, shame, maybe. Or regret. Maybe both. "Hey," I said. He tried to smile. Failed. "Hey." I sat down in the chair beside him. For a moment, neither of us said anything. "You look like hell," I said eventually. "Feel worse." I nodded slowly. "Why did you ask for me?" He looked away. Because you're the only one who still might care. I didn't know how to respond to that. I read your notebook, I said. He turned back to me, eyes searching. I meant what I wrote. Then why disappear? Why send all those messages? The photos? The ring? Was that you? He didn't answer right away. Some of it, he admitted. Not all. The first few, yeah. I wanted to punish you. I wanted you to feel what I felt, lost, scared, cornered. But then I stopped. It didn't help. It didn't fix anything. So who did the rest? The USB? The package? He shook his head. Wasn't me. I swear. After the motel, I went off the grid. I was hiding. From Megan. From you. From myself. I stared at him. I wanted to believe him. But could I? Why come back now? I asked. He let out a breath. Because I thought I was ready to die. I thought I deserved it. But I kept waking up. And after a while, that started to feel like a reason to come back. Even if it's just to say sorry. Is that what this is? An apology tour? He looked me in the eyes. It's a start. We sat in silence again. I lied for you, I said finally. And I lost everything. My relationship with Megan. My peace of mind. My sense of who I was. I know. Do you? He swallowed. I think about it every day. About how easy it was for me to ask. And how hard it must have been for you to say yes. You didn't make it hard, I said. That's the problem. He didn't argue. I stood up. I don't know what you're looking for, Jason. But I'm not here to forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He nodded slowly. That's fair. You hurt a lot of people. Not just Megan. Not just me. Yourself too. I know. So fix it. Start there. Start with yourself. I turned to leave. Wait, he said. I paused. You think Megan will ever talk to me again? I didn't turn around. That's not for me to say. But if she does, don't lie this time. When I left the hospital, the air felt colder. Sharper. Like the season had finally caught up with everything that had happened. I got in my car and sat there for a long time, staring out the windshield. Jason was alive. He was sorry. But was that enough? I don't know. All I know is this: I'm not the same person who said yes to him 3 months ago. That man thought friendship meant loyalty at all costs. That silence was the same as protection. That being a good person was as simple as being there when someone asked. Now I know better. Sometimes the hardest thing you can do for someone you love is hold them accountable. I don't know where this ends. Maybe Jason gets better. Maybe he disappears again. Maybe Megan finds peace. Maybe I do too. But for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe. And maybe that's enough for now. I didn't go back to see Jason. Not the next day, not the next week. Not even after Alvarez called to tell me he'd been transferred to a mental health facility closer to the city. She said he was cooperating, talking to therapists, even participating in group sessions. That he was showing signs of progress. I said I was glad. And I was. But I didn't feel ready to face him again. Instead, I threw myself into something I hadn't done in years: writing. Not journals. Not this account. But stories. Fiction. Something about giving shape to things I could control gave me a strange comfort. I made characters who faced hard choices, who made mistakes, who suffered losses, and sometimes, who found redemption. It helped. Not in a cathartic, all better now way. But enough. Enough to keep me grounded. Enough to remind me that even if we don't get the endings we want, we can still find meaning in the mess. Megan reached out to me about 3 weeks after I saw Jason in the hospital. It was an email. Short, simple. He called me. Said he saw you. Said he's trying. Thank you for whatever you said to him. I stared at that message for a long time before replying. He's got a long road ahead. We all do. But I'm glad he called. She didn't write back after that. I didn't expect her to. Just hearing from her, even in that quiet way, was something. I thought that might be the end of it. The book closed, the last chapter written. But life doesn't work like that. A few days later, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. Not a burner this time, just a regular number. One tied to a real contact. Claire. Can we talk? That was all it said. I hesitated. I hadn't heard her name in months. She hadn't replied when I messaged her after everything started. I didn't know what she wanted. But curiosity, maybe even something close to guilt, got the better of me. We met at a quiet cafe in the city. The kind with dim lighting and too many antique clocks on the wall. Claire looked older. Not in a physical way, but in the way someone looks when life has worn them down a little too fast. Thanks for coming, she said, her voice low. I wasn't sure I would, I admitted. I know. I wouldn't have blamed you. We sat in silence for a while, sipping coffee. I waited for her to speak first. I didn't know how bad it was, she finally said. With Jason. I knew he was married. I knew it was messy. But I didn't know how much he was unraveling. Not until after he left. He never moved in with you. No, she said. He spent a few nights at my place. Then he just vanished. No note. No call. I thought he'd ghosted me. It was humiliating. But now I think maybe it was something else. She took a deep breath. He was using me. Just like he used you. I didn't argue. It wasn't my place to decide how she framed it. I got one of those messages, too, she said quietly. After he disappeared. A note on my car windshield, you were never more than a story. I thought it was from Megan at first. But now I'm not so sure. That stunned me. I had always assumed I was the only one being stalked. The only one Jason, or whoever else was involved, had chosen to haunt. But apparently, Claire hadn't been spared. Did you tell the police? She shook her head. I didn't think they'd take it seriously. I just wanted to forget it all. But when I heard he was found, I couldn't stop thinking about it. She looked me dead in the eyes. Do you think he did it? Sent the notes? The photos? I took a long time to answer. Some of it, I said. But not all. Then who did the rest? I shook my head. I don't know. And that was the truth. I still didn't. And it bothered me. More than I liked to admit. Because if it wasn't Jason, at least not all of it, then who else had been pulling strings in the background? After Claire left, I sat there for a while, turning the question over and over in my mind. Then I remembered something Jason said, back in the hospital. I wanted to punish you. I wanted you to feel what I felt. But then. I stopped. So who picked it up after he stopped? Was it someone trying to protect Megan? A friend? A sibling? Someone who thought I deserved more than just a guilty conscience? Or had I attracted something else entirely? A stranger, watching from the sidelines, feeding off the drama? A vigilante of morality, punishing anyone who stood too close to wrongdoing? It's a terrifying thought. That someone out there, unknown and unseen, decided I was guilty. And acted on it. But the more I think about it, the more I believe it. Because 1 week later, I got another envelope. No note. No signature. Just a photo. It was me. At the cafe. Sitting across from Claire. Smiling faintly. Someone was still watching. And they wanted me to know it. This time, I didn't go to the police. I didn't tell Alvarez. I didn't even tell Claire. I took the photo, folded it neatly, and placed it in a drawer with the others. Not because I was giving up. But because I understood something I hadn't before. Some stories don't end. Not really. They echo. They linger. They become part of you. And sometimes, surviving them isn't about finding answers. It's about learning how to live with the questions. It's strange what you get used to. The first time I received a photo of myself, I felt exposed. Violated. Like my privacy had been peeled away, leaving only raw skin. But now, weeks later, the fear had settled into something quieter, an ambient hum beneath the rest of my life. A low-frequency anxiety I couldn't quite tune out, but one I had learned to live with. I kept the photo of me and Claire in the drawer with the others. Sometimes I'd take them out and spread them across my desk like puzzle pieces. A timeline of surveillance. A record of guilt. And always, in the back of my mind, the same question: who was watching me, and why? I started walking to work again. Not because I didn't have a car, but because I wanted to see things. Streets. Faces. I wanted to know if anyone looked familiar. If anyone lingered too long. But there was never anything. The people passed by me like ghosts. Everyone with their own lives, their own secrets. I told myself I was being paranoid. That whoever it was, if they were still out there, maybe they had made their point. Maybe it was over. Then I got the second envelope. This time, it was a letter. Typed. Cold. Clean. No return address. You confessed to lying. You admitted guilt. And yet you keep living as if that should absolve you. As if remorse is redemption. It is not. I read the letter 3 times before folding it slowly and placing it beside the photo. Then I locked the drawer. I didn't call Alvarez. I didn't even tell my sister. Because some part of me, the part that had been reshaped by guilt, by grief, by shame, agreed with the words. Remorse isn't redemption. Jason was still in treatment. Alvarez said he was improving. Still attending sessions. Still quiet, but cooperative. He hadn't asked for me again. I didn't ask to see him either. Megan had gone quiet again. Our brief email exchange hung in the air like a breath no one wanted to finish. And maybe that was for the best. Some fractures can't be repaired. Some cracks run too deep. One night, I stayed late at the office. Everyone else had gone home. The city outside was draped in fog, and the glow from the streetlights made everything look softer than it was. I sat at my desk, staring at the blank document on my screen, trying to write, trying to turn everything into fiction so I could control it. Give it a beginning, a middle, an end. But the words wouldn't come. So I just sat there. Thinking. And then the power cut out. Just for a moment. Maybe 5 seconds. Maybe 10. Long enough for the monitor to blink off. Long enough for my heart to start racing. Then it came back. But something was different. My screen was no longer blank. There were words. A sentence typed out in the same font I had been using. I hadn't written it. You're still pretending. I pushed my chair back, heart thudding. Looked around the room. Empty. Silent. I checked the document's history. Nothing. No shared access. No signs of tampering. Still, I knew what I saw. I printed the page. Just in case. Folded it and added it to the drawer. After that, I started noticing more. Subtle things. My front door left slightly ajar when I was sure I had locked it. My toothbrush moved from one side of the sink to the other. Emails marked as read that I hadn't opened. Little things. Small enough to doubt myself. But enough to know I wasn't alone. I installed a second security camera, inside, this time. Facing my front door. The first night, nothing. The second night, nothing. The third night, movement. I watched the footage the next morning with shaking hands. At 3:48 a.m., the camera flickered. Then a figure appeared. Dressed in black. Face covered. They stepped into the frame, stood at the threshold of my hallway. They didn't enter. Didn't move. Just stood there. Watching. For 6 minutes. Then they turned and walked away. There was no sound. No indication of how they got in or how they left. But they had been there. Inside my home. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't go to work the next day. I called Alvarez. Sent her the footage. She said she'd escalate the case. That they'd assign patrols. But I heard the strain in her voice. The frustration. They still had nothing. I stayed at a hotel that week. Didn't tell anyone which one. Didn't use my name. I needed time to think. Because the truth was, I had a theory. One I hadn't said out loud. What if this wasn't about Jason anymore? What if it never really was? What if someone else had decided to carry the burden of judgment? I started combing through every interaction. Every Reddit thread I had posted in. Every old email. Every person I had argued with, offended, forgotten. Every ex, every former coworker, every friend I had lost along the way. But there were too many variables. Too many ghosts. Then I thought of Megan again. Not her, specifically. But someone close to her. A cousin? A sibling? A friend with too much time and too much anger? I found an old social media post from years ago. A birthday photo. Megan, smiling. Jason with his arm around her. And another person, someone I hadn't thought about in a long time. Daniel. He was Megan's older brother. Protective. Quiet. Always watching. I had only met him twice. Once at a dinner party. Once at their wedding. But something about the way he looked at me both times, it hadn't been friendly. It had been, assessing. I started digging. Daniel worked in cybersecurity. Had for years. A contractor. Private firms. Off the grid. And he had motive. I found an email address tied to one of the burner accounts that had sent me messages in the beginning. It was masked. Hidden behind layers. But one breadcrumb had been left behind. An old IP ping. A location. Daniel's city. I called Alvarez again. Told her what I'd found. She promised to follow up. She sounded surprised. Like she hadn't thought to consider him. I don't know what that means yet. But I know this, someone went to a lot of trouble to remind me of my guilt. To turn remorse into punishment. To make sure I never forgot what I did. And now, I may finally know who. But what do I do with that? Do I confront him? Expose him? Tell Megan? Or do I let it go, knowing that maybe, just maybe, this was the price of silence? Because even now, after everything, I'm not sure if I was the villain in this story, or just someone who helped one. And maybe that's the scariest truth of all. I didn't sleep the night I connected Daniel to the surveillance. It wasn't just the revelation that shook me, it was what came after. The memory of his face. The way he stood back during conversations, always listening. Never volunteering much, but always watching. And something about the way he'd looked at me at the wedding. Not with hostility, exactly, but with a kind of quiet certainty. Like he knew I was a weak link. The next day, I sat with the possibility like it was something fragile. Too soon to break, too late to ignore. I wasn't ready to tell Megan. Not yet. Not without proof. So I went looking. Daniel didn't have much of an online presence, which for someone in cybersecurity wasn't surprising. His LinkedIn profile was outdated. His Facebook had no activity since 2017. No Twitter, no Instagram. He existed mostly in shadows, project contracts, brief mentions in conference bulletins, a handful of company profiles that still listed him as consultant. But I found an old article about a talk he'd given at a private tech summit. The photo showed him standing beside a projector, speaking to a half-lit room full of suits. The topic, digital tracking, ethics and efficiency in the modern age. The irony made my stomach turn. That afternoon, I sent Alvarez everything I had found, what little it was. The burner email tie-in. The location ping. The cybersecurity background. She responded 2 hours later. We're looking into him. Don't confront him yourself. But I wasn't good at waiting anymore. So I didn't listen. I found Daniel's address through a property search. A small house in a quiet suburb 2 towns over. Low brick walls. A manicured lawn. Curtains drawn. Everything about it screamed control. I parked 3 houses down, waited until dusk, and walked the rest of the way. There were lights on inside. A shadow moved across the window. I rang the doorbell. A few seconds passed. Then the door opened halfway. Daniel stood there, older than I remembered, but not by much. Salt and pepper stubble. Deep lines around his eyes. He didn't look surprised to see me. I was wondering when you'd show up, he said. I blinked. You know why I'm here. He didn't answer. Just stepped aside and motioned me in. I hesitated. You're not going to poison me, are you? That earned the faintest smile. If I were going to hurt you, I would have done it already. I stepped in. His house was as quiet as the man himself. Neat. Sparse. Minimalist furniture. A few framed photographs, none of Megan, I noticed. No family photos. No clutter. Just purpose. He led me to a small office. One desk. One monitor. No visible files. But on the wall behind the desk, there was a corkboard. I stopped cold. Because it was covered in photos. Of me. Daniel watched me as I stared. I thought seeing it might save time. There were shots from my walks to work. From the cafe with Claire. Even one from the day Megan had visited me months ago, envelope in hand. And not just photos. Notes. Dates. Small captions underlined in red ink. Like a case file. I turned to him, pulse pounding. Why? He didn't flinch. Because Jason lied. And so did you. And people needed to know. So you took it into your own hands? Would you have done anything different? He asked, voice quiet but firm. If someone had betrayed your sister? If someone had helped cover up her humiliation? I opened my mouth. Closed it. This wasn't about revenge, he continued. It was about truth. About consequences. You told your story to the world and painted yourself as conflicted. Broken. A man caught between loyalties. But you still lied. And lies have weight. You think stalking me, threatening me, makes you better? You were never in danger, he said. You were reminded. That made me laugh. Bitter, sharp. Reminded of what? Of what silence costs. Of what enabling costs. I shook my head. You have no idea what it cost me. Oh, but I do. I watched you fall apart. That was the point. Not to destroy you. Just to make sure you felt it. The rage I'd been suppressing finally broke through. You don't get to decide what other people feel. You don't get to play God with someone's life just because you think they deserve to suffer. He didn't respond. Just watched me. Megan doesn't know, does she? She knows someone was looking out for her. That's enough. No, I said. It's not. He finally looked away. I've stopped, he said after a long pause. For what it's worth. I stopped after the last photo. When I saw you with Claire. When I saw that you got it. Did I? Didn't you? I didn't answer. Because maybe I had. And maybe that's what terrified me most. I left Daniel's house feeling hollow. Not because he'd broken me, but because I didn't know if I could truly disagree with him. His methods were wrong. Cruel. Obsessive. But his reasoning? That night, I didn't go home. I drove. 4 hours. Past the edge of the city. Into open fields. Just driving, thinking. Then I pulled over. Parked on the side of the road. Opened my phone. And wrote Megan an email. A real one. Not a plea for forgiveness. Not a request for sympathy. Just the truth. I told her about Daniel. What he'd done. Why. I told her I hadn't known. That I hadn't asked for it. That I didn't think it was right. But I also told her that I understood. Because I had lied. And maybe the worst part wasn't the lie itself. Maybe it was that, for a moment, I thought it was the right thing to do. I didn't send the email. Not right away. I read it again. Edited it. Let it sit in drafts for a few days. Then, one morning, I clicked send. Megan never replied. But I didn't need her to. Because this wasn't about resolution anymore. It was about responsibility. And now, finally, I was ready to carry it. Not as punishment. But as a promise. That the next time someone I love asks me to lie, I'll have the strength to say no. And if I don't? Then I'll deserve whatever follows. I kept waiting for the world to shift after I sent the email to Megan. Not dramatically. Not like an explosion or an earthquake. Just something, an acknowledgement. A ripple in the still water. An answer to the silent question I'd been carrying all these months, am I still redeemable? But nothing came. And I think that's the most honest ending to this part of the story, silence. Megan didn't respond. Jason remained in treatment. Daniel disappeared back into the folds of his minimalist life. Claire moved on. I saw her tagged in a photo weeks later, laughing beside someone new. The police closed their investigation. Alvarez told me she'd be transferring to a different unit. She wished me luck and hung up. I haven't heard from her since. And me? I went back to living. Quietly. Carefully. Cautiously. But not the same. Something in me changed. Something that won't change back. I started therapy. At first, it was awkward. I didn't know how to start. I kept thinking the therapist would ask me why I was there, and I'd say something too honest or not honest enough. But she didn't ask that. She just said, tell me where it hurts. And I did. It took time, but I told her about Jason. About Megan. About the lie. The fallout. The envelopes. The guilt. The sleepless nights. The dreams. The dread. And eventually, Daniel. The wall of photos. The cold logic behind it. She didn't judge me. She didn't coddle me either. She said something that stuck with me. When we protect someone at the cost of the truth, we don't just injure the ones they've wronged. We injure ourselves. Because part of us knows we're helping someone stay broken. That hit me harder than anything else had. Because I hadn't just lied to Megan. I hadn't just enabled Jason. I had injured myself. Every night I justified my silence. Every time I said, he's my best friend. Every time I convinced myself it wasn't my place. I became smaller. Duller. More dishonest with myself. And now, months later, I was finally beginning to understand the full price of that. I didn't go back to the drawer of letters for a long time. But one night, I opened it again. Laid them out on the table. The photos. The notes. The message on the computer screen. The printed letter. The final photo of me and Claire. And I burned them. Not because I wanted to forget. But because I didn't want to be defined by them anymore. Fire is a funny thing. Destructive, yes, but it's also the fastest way to make peace with permanence. You can't piece ash back together. You can't reread a flame. I watched them disappear, one by one, until only smoke and soot remained. And I felt lighter. Spring came slowly this year. The air stayed cold longer than usual, and the trees were slow to bloom. But it came. Quiet, inevitable, and persistent. Just like healing. I started jogging again. Just around the block at first, then down to the park. It felt good to move. To feel my body again. To remember it wasn't just a vessel for stress and fear. I ran into an old coworker at the market one morning. We talked. Laughed. She asked how I'd been, and I gave her a version of the truth. She didn't press for more. I think she knew not to. Later that night, I opened a blank document on my computer. And I started writing. Not my story. Not Jason's. But something new. A story about a man who made a mistake and didn't know how to make it right. About the people he hurt. About the silence he carried. About how he finally, slowly, chose to live anyway. It felt strange to write something so close to home but not quite mine. Like seeing yourself in a reflection that's just slightly off. But it helped. And I think that's what I needed more than anything. Not an ending. But permission to begin again. There's one last thing. A few weeks ago, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. But not typed this time. Handwritten. Neat. Inside, just one line. You did better than I thought you would. No name. No clue. Just that. Maybe it was Daniel. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe it was no one at all. But I didn't put it in a drawer. I didn't burn it either. I pinned it to the corkboard above my desk. Not as a threat. Not as a reminder of the past. But as a promise to myself. That I'd keep doing better. Even when no one's watching. Especially then. Because integrity isn't just what we show others. It's what we live with when we're alone. And for the first time in a long time, I feel okay being alone. Not because I have all the answers. But because I've stopped running from the questions.